this regard because the Iranian people should be and must be the winner at the end of the day over all these problems. I'd like to stress that we need not to give false information about the city of Qom. The situation is stable now in Qom, and some of those people living in Qom have left the city because they want to leave the city. And if we said such a school or such a university should not start working or classes, this means that the people must stay at home, not to leave the city. I would like also to say that 20% of those who used to commute to Jilan city cannot go now because the Jilan governorate has some cases of corona, and again, when a school is closed or a university or whatever, people should stay at home, and we need not to exaggerate the matters. We have 2 hospitals that are allocated for these cases, and 80% of the hospital capabilities are allocated for the corona, and other percent is for the other things that are on a daily basis done, services, medical services done and given and offered to the citizens. I'd like here to thank all the medical people, nurses, medical staff here and there who worked in these governmental organizations because they are doing their job every single day, and despite all the difficulties, they have families, they have kids, they have responsibilities, but they are always there to help the citizens, and they need not to go commute to their houses and come back to the hospitals. They have the staff people to live and spend the nights in the hospital. And I'd like to say that so many cases were about to be released and discharged from the hospitals. Our doctors are working hard and sacrifice a lot. Before any question, I'd like to say that the government and the president and all members of the cabinet are quite committed to the responsibilities, the legal responsibilities, and also we will never give a blind eye to any mistakes or any pitfalls, and anyone who died because of this will be responsibility. The Minister of Health has a spokesperson in this regard, and these information should be reflected through the spokesperson of the Ministry of Health. On a daily basis, we have these tests, and we need to make sure that everyone is doing. A trader who went to the Emirates and then he went to China, and this man was the main reason to bring this virus into our country. The government is working hard. I need not to talk too much in this connection. So many countries haven't dealt with this virus problem in such a transparency that we follow here in our country. So many countries suffer from this, but in Iran, in our country, we need to be professional. We need to work hard within transparency. We need to work. We need to continue our approach. We need to declare the reality. We need, regarding the Khorasan governorate, where you can say that the coronavirus is there. Is this true or not? Is Khorasan corona-free governorate or not? We need some information. Regarding Qom and Tehran, has the Minister of Health discussed this matter? Yeah, 1 or 2 days ago, there were like 50 cases, and the news said there are more and more cases, but the reality is, if you love your country, we need to be honest, and if you have a peace not be reached, because we need to be honest, we need to be transparent, and those people are trying to distort the situation. Regarding Khorasan and other regions, I'd like to say that we deal with the cases, we deal with the symptoms, and we have all the abilities and all the capabilities to fight this virus. And if we have a case that is suspected, we will move it to a better place to be hospitalized. In more than 10 governorates, we have the full capabilities to determine, to detail, and to treat, and we will say everything in a clear way. We follow all the governorates, we follow all the cities, and even before the World War I, we were against the decisions of closing whole cities or closing whole governorates, because this has bad consequences. If you close the city or a governorate, what are the citizens there supposed to do? We have the information, we analyze the information, and if we find a decision that is good, we will apply that decision. We need not to exaggerate. We need not someone to say that the coronavirus is all over the place in our country. No, we need not that. We have to be up to the responsibility, and we have to work closely with all agencies, and we don't agree on closing a city or a governorate. Mr. Darwishi, I have a question. Regarding the public health in our country, where some medical staff and some medical personnel just resigned or don't work properly. Have you talked to the media about this? Have you talked to the media about this? This is not true, because it depends on even the uniform. It depends on the dress of men and women inside a hospital. You cannot do that, and no one has resigned. For example, if there is a case, a person that is hit by the virus, then the medical staff should deal with this case in a certain way, within a certain clothing or within a certain uniform.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I would like to seize this opportunity.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to seize the opportunity.
Okay, you have been listening to officials updating the situation that is happening with coronavirus. That was Iran's health ministry spokesman, Araj Hirachi, and Ali Rabea, government spokesperson, updating the situation on corona. Dorsa Jabari, our Dorsa Jabari is live listening in Tehran as well. So Dorsa, the men were talking about emphasizing the importance of transparency. They keep assuring the world that they will give the proper numbers, but there still is a conflict between what the health ministry is saying and what an MP in Combs is saying about the number of deaths right now from coronavirus in Iran. So what do we know?
Well, the health ministry has now confirmed the numbers that that local MP from Qom was saying. The health ministry has just announced that the death toll is up to 50, and the number of confirmed cases that they have in the country is up to 61. The other important note to make at this point is that this presser has been very interesting, because it's the first official presser that we have had over the past few days since the news first broke last Wednesday of the death of the first spokesperson in the country as a result of the virus. The officials in this presser, Ali Rabi, the government spokesperson, said their aim is to be as transparent as possible. Every day, the health ministry spokesperson has been appearing on state TV, on the phone, giving daily briefings and death tolls and confirmed cases across the country. But the important point right now is we've just been hearing from that MP from Rome, who has become very vocal. He is saying that the first death occurred in the city of Rome on February 13th, and not as when the health ministry made the announcement, which was February 19th. So there is a gap, again, that we see between when the death actually occurred and when the health officials in the country decided to make the news public. This is something that is going to be very, very important because President Hassan Rouhani has been under attack consistently as a result of that Ukrainian passenger plane that was shot down by mistake early January after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Those days that the Iranian officials denied having anything to do with that passenger plane coming down, killing 176 people on board. This is something that will be very, very important in this case for Iranians, because they now are saying very different information is coming through from local officials in Rome and the health ministry officials and government officials. But what we do know right now after this press conference is that they are attempting to control the spread of this disease. They are urging the public not to panic. They say that they have the facilities, the gear to deal with this outbreak, and they are urging people to just be cautious and exercise the proper hygiene steps that they've been telling them on state TV. They've been showing people how to put on masks and to remind them to wash their hands consistently. A number of public events have been canceled. Schools and universities across the country, over 2/3 of the cities, have all been closed till next week, and it will most likely be extended further at this point. We also know that a number of international airlines have canceled flights, including Turkish Airlines. Qatar, we've just heard that they will be quarantining people for 14 days upon entry into the country from Iran. These are all measures being taken by neighboring countries to try and limit the spread of this disease. But we can confirm also where this originated. The health ministry spokesperson said that they believe that the Iranian national who traveled to China via the UAE is the person who who carried it back into the country, and he has since passed away. He was the first Iranian national to die in Rome last week when we heard that announcement. So a lot of information coming out. Also interesting to note that the local MP from Rome is making certain claims that the health official and government officials have yet to respond to.
And you make a valid point there, Dorsa, that this is a time when people really need to be able to trust their government, and it's coming at a time when they have been very skeptical of their leadership so far. Okay, so thank you for trying to clarify some of those numbers for us. Let's go to Hong Kong now, where our Adrian Brown is joining us live. So, Adrian, what is the latest? These numbers, that they seem to be kind of ticking up and trickling in from various places.
Yes, that's right. While people are still dying from this virus in China, people are still continuing to be infected from this virus, but the number of people who are recovering is also very high. About 1/3 of those who have been infected have made a full recovery, more than 25,000. So that's something positive to report. From Beijing in the last hour, we've had official confirmation that the National People's Congress, the annual session of China's parliament, has been cancelled because of the coronavirus. This is the biggest political event of the year in China, drawing more than 3,000 delegates from across the country. But not just delegates, there are also staff and also journalists, which takes the total at the NPC to around about 8,000 generally. Because of that, the government has decided it's simply too risky to hold the event, and therefore it has been cancelled. Now, President Xi Jinping, who we didn't see much of at the start of this virus, has now become much more high profile. He's been seen to be taking much more decisive action. He appeared on state television on Friday night, chairing a meeting of the Politburo Standing Committee and stressing that this was a that this was the biggest public health emergency that China has ever confronted since the founding of the People's Republic in 1949. Now, President Xi Jinping has said that we have to get the balance between containing this virus and also getting people back to work. He is is very mindful of the fact that the economic growth in China, the engine of world growth, is beginning to slow. And one thing we should remember, at the National People's Congress, that is when the Premier outlines his growth targets for the year ahead. Now, we know that the growth target is going to be much lower in 2020, but of course we're now going to have to wait perhaps a bit longer to know what his forecast does, a forecast that has of course been complicated by this virus.
Okay, Adrian, so again, you've touched on this, but if you could just put into perspective the significance of President Xi Jinping acknowledging that China hasn't necessarily done the best with this. That is significant.
Yeah, I mean, he used the word shortcomings. Here was the president of China. I haven't heard a president of China admit shortcomings in the government, but he did that on Friday night. That is extremely rare, and that just underscores, I think, just how serious the situation is. Now, President Xi Jinping, of course, is a man under enormous pressure right now. As I say, his desire is to get, the economy moving again, but I suspect that, his economists and advisors have perhaps also been saying, it may not be possible to do that right now because the virus is not totally under control. Although just across the border in Guangdong province on Monday, the government there announced that it was lowering its emergency level from grade 1 to grade 2. Significant because Guangdong is where China's IT sector is concentrated. And of course, that is an area of the country that really is a major driver of economic growth.
Okay, Adrian Brown with the latest there in Hong Kong, the latest what's happening on the mainland as well. So thank you very much. Now let's go to Rob Matheson, who is in Baghdad. Rob, a moment ago, Dorsa Jabari gave us the latest from Iran, where there's some confusion, some conflict on the numbers, but regardless of what they are, they seem to be ticking up. So obviously that means that the neighbors of Iran are very concerned about their borders. So what can you tell us that's happening in Baghdad?
That's exactly right, Rochelle. I mean, Iraq and Iran share a very long border, and Iraq has been very conscious about, for the last couple of days, about putting lots of medical teams along the major crossing points along that border. But the story this morning is actually on the southern border with Kuwait, because Kuwait has asked Iraq to close the Safwan border crossing. It's a land border between the two countries. It's not a significant border crossing in that much of the goods, the big goods that would go into southern Iraq would normally go into Basra ports. But nevertheless, it does see a lot of traffic backwards and forwards, mainly trucks carrying, say, food, for example, but also buses carrying people. And Kuwait announced this morning that it has 3 cases of this strain of the coronavirus, which have been reported this morning. And in order to try to stop the virus from spreading into Iraq, across that border crossing, it wants the Safwan border crossing closed. And this does come at a time when Iraq has already, as I say, been putting into place some sort of preventative measures. It's already put a ban on non-Iraqis flying from Iran, but also it's beginning to widen those restrictions as well. Certainly Iraqis who are returning from Iran and other nationalities are being screened as they arrive at Baghdad's airport and also at Najaf airport, we're aware of. But we went to visit a quarantine hospital here in Baghdad a couple of days ago, and that was where a number of people who had traveled to China and had returned to Iraq were quarantined and assessed for several days, and then were declared to be free of any symptoms and have been allowed to go back to their homes, but will continue to be checked. But as I mentioned before, Iraq has also been putting into place these quarantine zones along its main crossing points up its shared border with Iran. That they hope will be effective, but there is a problem. The border between Iraq and Iran is very porous in places. Towards the north, it's very mountainous, and towards the south, there are marshy areas as well. Those are very difficult to patrol at the best of times, and quite often they can be used as smuggling routes, and people do pass between the two countries and are not officially registered. So the medics here in Iraq so far are not reporting any official cases of this strain of the coronavirus in Iraq, but they're just having to sit and wait and hope that the procedures they've put into place will hold, that the defenses will be strong enough, but they are waiting to see when and if the first case of coronavirus is going to appear in Iraq.
Okay. Rob, Rob Matheson there with the latest in Baghdad. Rob, thank you. Still ahead on Al Jazeera, political upheaval in Malaysia. The Prime Minister police exchanged gunfire with soldiers during a protest in the capital.